The building was not even new. It wasn't anything fancy or anything like that. So it was just like, and then if I wanted to renew my lease, they were gonna increase it like to I think like 2,100, and I was like, hell no, I'm not doing that. Like, I'm like, there's no way I can stay here and keep paying these people that much money.
What's up, everyone? This is Niyi Adewale, and I am the host of the Ekabo Home Financial Freedom Mastermind Group. This group meets every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern, and the members of this group are committed to achieving financial freedom while we're still young enough to actually enjoy it. So on this podcast, you're going to get VIP access to the conversations that we have about different forms of investment and ways to get your dollars working harder for you than you worked to first acquire those dollars. So today we're joined by Isabelle Raphael. She recently purchased her first home, and we're going to walk through that full process and get into the details of kind of that first purchase. But before we go into the process, Isabelle, what made you even want to buy a home? Typically, you see people, wait until their late 30s, 40s to go purchase that first home. Why now?
My goal was to always purchase my first home by the age around like 30. So it was always a goal of mine. And plus, I live in the Northeast. I live in Boston my whole entire life. So it's very expensive. So paying rent versus like buying a home, like ideally buying make more sense for me because renting did not make any sense because Boston is really expensive. And I feel like I was just throwing my money away. I was not getting any equity while I was just like the other person that I was paying to, they were using that money doing other stuff. I was like, it makes perfect sense for me to buy something. And the ideal home that I would want to buy, I couldn't even able to get that in Boston because the price is so expensive, and then like the home or older, I would have to do like renovation and all of that. So I was like, you know what? Let me start looking outside of Boston to see if I can find what could be like within my price range and what I can afford.
And just for a frame of reference, for those that don't know, I actually lived in Boston for a bit, and I can testify it is very expensive. But Isabelle, roughly how much were you paying for rent, and what did that get you?
I was paying 1,800 like for a 1 bedroom bath, and that was like in the south of Boston. So the building was not even new. It wasn't anything fancy or anything like that. So it was just like, and then if I wanted to renew my lease, they were gonna increase it like to I think like 2,100, and I was like, hell no, I'm not doing that. Like, I'm like, there's no way I can stay here and keep paying these people that much money. So that's when I decided to be like, hey, you know what? I need to start saving and get into the process of purchasing a home.
Okay. And you mentioned a key part of that, right? Saving. That's a huge part of the initial to even be able to go purchase that home. So did you do anything different from a savings perspective to keep yourself accountable with that?
I mean, for me, I've always been a saver. So I'm from the Caribbean. There's something that we call Sous Sous. So for the people that's not in the call might not know what it is. It's just like it's a group of people that put money together, and at the end of every week or every month somebody get paid. So I've been doing that now like for 8 years. So that's kind of like the way that I save money and save. That's all like I ended up saving for that house, but that ended up biting me into the butt because the bank is very strict when it comes to money and stuff. So they need to know where your money is coming from and stuff. So I would highly recommend, if it's something in your culture that people do, like put money together and then like you collecting it at the end, I would not recommend you can still do it, but I would say that to wait at least like 2 months prior to that, because you want to have that set amount of money in your account, so that way the bank can see like, yes, it's my money. Because if you put like a lump sum of money in your bank account, so they have no way to track it. Like they're gonna be like, hey, I need to see bank statement, I need to see where that money is coming from, and if you can't verify it, you won't be able to use that money. So that ended up happening to me in the process of purchasing my home. It was it was crazy. So I did not know that. So for anybody that kind of like do, I would not recommend doing that. So yeah.
And you bring up an amazing point, and a lot of people don't know that. It
Hmm.
actually wasn't a thing until after the 9/11 attacks. After the attacks in 9/11, there was a change up to some of the lending practices because some of the terrorist groups were laundering money through real estate, through lump sums and cash gifts. And so they changed that up to have a quote unquote seasoning period. And a lot of people don't know that, but that's a great call out. And one thing that you mentioned, right, was the whole process with the banks. So can you get into that a little bit about how your experience was with the different banks?
I would highly recommend like anyone, if you are planning of purchasing a home, make sure you do your research like with lenders. So you might find like one lender that said, hey, I can give you this amount based on your debt income ratio and all of that, and this is the rate that I can give you. And you might find like another one that tell you something completely different. In my process, because I wanted a specific home, and one lender said to me that, hey, they can approve me for that amount of money. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna go with them. So I went to, I mean, like, I'll say like five lenders. So out of all the five of them, um, four of them said no, they couldn't do it, but one of them said yes, they would be able to do it. And that bank was Bank of America. Their process was so long. I put an offer on a home like in April. I waited like till like June for them to give me an answer. I ended up losing my earnest money. Earnest money, it's basically like money that you give. It's kind of like some of the down payment of the money. I ended up losing that because they waited so long, and then the market was so hot at the time, because the the buyer was like this. I mean, like the seller was like, no, I'm not gonna wait anymore because it's been more than like 8 weeks we've been waiting for you to get approved and everything. They had everything. They waited last minute to approve the loan. And then at the time, the seller was like, no, I'm going to go with somebody else. I was so mad. I was like, yeah, why these people, I don't know what kind of practices of these people are doing. And I had to be the one who keep calling them back and forth, be like, and they would wait on a Friday evening and be like, hey, I need this piece of paper. I would send them to them. I would send the piece of paper to them, and then they'll be like, oh yeah, I didn't receive it. I was like, I did email it to you, so I don't understand why you're saying that you didn't receive it. Anyway, I would highly recommend to stay away from the big banks, because honestly, they don't care about like, I'm not saying that they don't care, but like from my experience, like I feel like they didn't care. And when I went with a different lender, which was like a local credit union, they were more welcoming. They walked me through the whole process. It was like seamlessly easy comparing like to the big banks. Because at the end of the day, you're giving them your money. It's not like you buying it like for free. I think they should be able to help you, but I don't know. It just was not an easy process for me at all. And I would highly recommend people to do your research when it comes to the lender, and try to go with the small local bank. They will help you throughout the process.
And that's amazing advice. I can tell you, I've had a similar experience in working with the bigger banks. It can be a crazy process, and the whole thing with that a lot of people don't realize is these bigger banks. they are not necessarily geared toward caring about, my loan or one person's loan. They're going after those billion dollar loans, multi-million dollar loans. And they don't keep most of these on their books anyway. They're just trying to qualify you for a secondary loan market where they can immediately offset it off their books.
Mm.
Whereas when you work with those local lenders, like you mentioned, those local lenders really care because they're going to keep those loans on their books. They're going to have a relationship with you. I can tell you that for the properties I own in Louisville, that was one of the best things I was able to do early on is establish a relationship with a local lender. And now that we've bought a couple properties together, they have been able to get creative in certain ways, like, hey, need this product may work for what you're trying to do here. And they start to suggest ways to partner more. So that's a really good call out, Isabelle.
Yeah, I think it's good to do your own research and see what's available to you, because I mean you never know what you can find out there. It's like, I would say it's like the same thing. Like, let's say you were like trying to get like insurance. You don't go like for the first one you find. So you kind of like do your research and try to see like what best fit for you, and yeah, and go from there.
Now, you mentioned that it was a crazy drawn out process from April all the way to June. You're waiting. You had your eyes set on this property and they end up going with somebody else. How did you stay motivated to continue down the path to purchase a home? What was driving you?
Um, what was driving me was the fact that I did not want to be paying somebody else's. I just like, that does not make sense to me. I'm like, I'm not having any equity of this. Like, I'm paying like $18. I mean, like 1,800 every month, and then I'm like, that can get me a house. I mean, with that money that I'm putting down. So I was like, that was my main focus. That was my why. And my other thing is kind of like the process. It's very tedious. Like, it's a long process. So I would say that I start putting offers on houses in November 2020. I mean, November 2020. I I didn't ended up, I mean, closing on the property a year later by December 2021. So it was a long process. I've put offers like probably like on 10 houses. Like, it was just so long. Like, the thing is, like, you got to know your why. Like, why are you doing this? And I feel like the why will drive you to get out of the situation that you want to get out. So
And that's super important. Would highly agree. You got to understand, hey, the end goal in mind. And when we think about that, what is your end goal? When you look at this and you trying to take a step back 5 years from now, 6 years from now, are you looking to purchase more properties? Are you looking to stick with this one? What are your goals as it pertains to this?
um as it pertains to this, definitely, I definitely want to get into real estate. I invest my money also in the stock market, but I like that diversification. So I think that having piece of real estate is really important. I think people are always going to need a place to stay, and there's a shortage of housing for the past 10 years in the US. So my goal, I'm trying to get five of these things. Like, now I got my first one. I'm already planning and budgeting, trying to get like my second one by the end of this year. So it's like, you just gotta stay focused and know what you want and know your why and your way, and then try to make it happen. So yeah.
Absolutely. And I'm seeing some comments here about you having the bug already. And I would agree. Literally, it's when you buy that first property, it's never just one. That's why you try to inspire, motivate people just to get started. And once you get started and you start seeing kind of, the benefits, the equity that you're building, it's hard to go back to that renter model, to your point, Isabelle. And I guess a question, if you had somebody that was coming to you for advice, right? Looking to purchase their first home, they're nervous, they're scared about the process, they don't really know what's going on. what advice would you give that person in terms of getting started?
The first thing I would say, save, 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 save. I mean, I don't know how to say it again. You definitely need to save, and then like keep track on your credit. Credit is very, 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 very important. I don't know how to emphasize on this. Credit is important. Like make sure you save. Because even for me, I put in the offer that I put in my property. I have to come with more money because they wanted me to pay for. And let's say you put in 5% down. 5% down is fine. On top of that, you have to pay. Most of the time, most sellers don't feel willing to negotiate with them and see like, hey, you know what I mean? You have to negotiate with them to see like how much they're going to offer you. But that's what I'm saying. Save, 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 because you never know. You might say, hey, I'm putting 3.5% down. That's the only, and then the seller said, yeah, I'm going to contribute 2 or 3%, and then things might change, and then they'll be like, have to come up with with more money. So I would say definitely save and track your finances, like make it a priority. If it's your goal to buy a home, definitely save and also keep track on your credit, because credit is important.
That is true. That is true. A lot of people don't think about that. They hear, okay, I'm going to put 5% down, and they don't realize that closing costs can account for another 2 to 3% of the purchase price, right? That could be a whole nother 5 to 10K that you didn't budget for if you don't have those savings in place. And you mentioned the importance of credit and tracking your spending. Do you have any apps or spreadsheets, or how do you track your credit and your spending?
You I track mine to Mint, and also in like the bank that I have like a budget thing that I set up. So that's kind of like how I track my spending. I'm not a big fan of I don't know. I'm not a big fan of budget, putting like a limit and saying that, hey, this is, I feel like too much restriction. It's kind of like as human, we ended up not doing it anyway. So it's kind of like you just have to be intentional about it. If you are intentional about it, I think you find a way to save and be, and yeah,
If you're intentional.
yeah, be intentional about your spending, and then see where your money is going. And when you do that, you'll be able to cut down on the necessary unnecessary stuff, and then you'll be able to save. So that's kind of like the way that I do it.
Okay. Kind of switching gears a little bit. Um, there was a interesting fact. So during the pandemic, while everybody is gaining that COVID-19, I ain't gonna lie, I gained a little bit. I had to get back in the gym. But while everybody was gaining that COVID-19, you decided to put together a fitness guide and release that. Can you dive into a little bit of the inspiration for that and also kind of explain what that is?
Okay, during the pandemic, okay, when the pandemic happened, like obviously I was not taking it seriously in the beginning. I was like, what is this? Is this real? Like, are we really gonna be locked up at home? We won't be able to go anywhere. And then like when they start closing the gym, I was like, what? Wait a minute, is this serious? I was like, you know what? I have to come up. And I mean, like everybody has a different way. Like they really stress and stuff. Like for me, it's exercise. Like it's like if I go ahead, I get a good workout, and I feel great after that. So whereas for other people, it's kind of like, you know what I mean? They use other methods. Like for me, working out is that way. So during the pandemic, I was like, you know what? I need to come up with a plan. So that's when I created like a workout routine, and I started like doing like 2 days a week, and it was at home. So that's how I ended up staying consistent and insane throughout this pandemic, because I was just like, what is going on here? Like you can't go anywhere. you can't travel. I'm like, I love to travel. I love to go to places. So I'm like, I got to be at home. And in Boston, it was really strict. They really took it like very seriously. You literally couldn't go anywhere. Like when when the mask mandate was like other city, I see people, some of my friends in other city were like going to the clubs and everything. I was partying. I'm like, I wish I was like you, because we can't be doing that because the governor was like everything. Yeah, it was just like crazy. So that's how I ended up creating that fitness guide, and it literally got me through the pandemic. Like if it wasn't for that, I don't even know, honestly. So yeah.
No, that's fair. That is fair. And we will include a link to that in the bio or in the show notes. Um, but no, this is awesome, Isabelle. And I want to kind of kick it to the rest of the mastermind group who has been patient and silently listening. Any questions from the group for Isabelle?
Hey Izzy, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you, Mati?
I'm doing well. If you had to change anything about your process, what would that be? Your home buying process, what would it be?
I would definitely say like the lending process, because it was crazy. Like I ended up losing my NS money. I'm still a little salty about that, but I ended up losing my NS money, and also the lender that I went uh the lender that I ended up choosing, was not good at all. So that's why I said that it's really important, like, to kind of like do extensive research when it comes to your lender, and go with the smaller bank, because I they tend to care more versus those big banks, I would say. So yeah, that's one thing I would change.
Okay. I know you said you initially started with what, Bank of America, or was Bank of America that gave you the loan?
No, I started Bank of America. I didn't go with Bank of America, and I ended up with the local credit union instead of Bank of America.
What was that credit union, if you don't mind me asking?
They like in the Atlanta, Georgia. I
I think
don't
it's Lone Star, Lone Star, Lone Star Mortgage.
Lone Star Mortgage. Yeah, that's the name now.
Okay, nice. Well, thank you for that information, Isabella.
Any other questions, comments from Nate or Aze?
No questions. So it was, great information, and hearing your story. I'm, a little somewhat biased. I can understand as far as the big banks. I work for a big bank. And so I do understand the issues that happen. And like you said, as far as like everything at the last minute, that's across the board a lot of times. When it comes to lenders, I don't know why that happens, but I've experienced that several times too. They're sending out, we need, whatever doc, and it's like 2 days before closing, or, a doc has expired. So I need more income verification again, because those old statements are expired now. But I would say that in going through a bank, they're very traditional, right? So there's not a lot of wiggle room, because, they have to follow higher standards a lot of times than credit unions. And a lot of credit unions are nonprofit, like Delta Community. I know they do a lot of great lending as well. So, they just have different standards. But I would say that I have had a really great experience this last home that I purchased. Literally 29 days it took us from beginning to end. And we went through Wells Fargo. So I say that to say that don't, close your mind all together with big banks. It's just you do have to know the requirements, just like you said. It's important to do your research.
Absolutely. And Ahize, we're going to come to you before we go to a big bank to find out which one's the good ones. All right, we're going to talk to you first.
Right.
We appreciate that. Okay, so Isabelle, last piece. before we kind of transition into the normal mastermind group. This is a bit of a change up for those that have joined other ones before. We're going to start bringing on guests like Isabelle to tell stories about specific things. Isabelle's is the story of a first-time home buyer. We have mortgage lenders lined up. We have business owners lined up. So stay tuned. We will always give you a heads up at least the day before. But Isabelle, if you had to pick a favorite book or quote, something that really was inspirational in your life that helped inspire kind of your investing career or inspire the mindset that you have today, what would that be?
A quote, a book. I cannot think of anything right now, but what I would say, my thing is like, instead of like setting goal and stay on the side, and like I'm more of the type like of taking action. So if I find out about something, I always go back and just like research it. So I would say my thing was just like take action. Just don't be like setting goals. Like, setting goal is good. Like you can write things down, but I'm more action oriented. So I would say when you take the first step, you figure out like how the next step will happen. So I would say, yeah, that's one thing I would recommend.
I like it. Take action. Consistent action is better than, and execute is better than, sitting on the sidelines waiting for the perfect thing to come along. Isabelle, we truly appreciate you. Thank you for joining us in the mastermind group. And now we're going to transition back to the full group. And last time, Ahize, I apologize, I missed a question from you. I think you were asking something in terms of marketing from an Airbnb perspective, correct? And you may be on mute.
Yes. I believe, so much has happened in these last 7 days, so I'm trying to remember, but I believe I was asking if anyone does any like additional marketing for their properties or anything on social media, like what does that look like?
So for the Airbnb properties, I've seen a little bit of what you do, and I really like that. But the social media marketing, not so much, outside of posting videos to say, hey, we have a new one up and running. What we have done is with the system that we have in place, and I'm pulling something up right now, we use something called Hospitable, which I think we've talked about before. Let me share my screen. And Hospitable recently allowed you to start having a direct site. And so what we've done is we do utilize that direct site. And now for guests that are returning, this is our direct site. And we put all of our listings on there. And for guests that are returning, they have the ability to book direct and save on fees. I actually had first guest just book. It's a guest that stayed twice already, and they just recently booked to actually stay direct, and they're saving about $300 on fees, which brings me to the point like, hey, I should probably raise the cost of a direct booking. And what we do is we have these little cards that we put out. I don't have one in front of me right here, but it basically says, hey, thank you so much for staying with us. Next time you can save on these admin fees by booking direct. And there's a QR code that takes you to this website to show you, how they can book direct. And it's linked to our calendar, et cetera. And this is kind of how we're doing it. What about you, Lisa? How are you leveraging social media?
I guess I'm trying to figure it out. So I am in a lot of different groups. So that's good just to, learn from others. And then, we typically will post each other's listings and, kind of check it out, give feedback. Hold on, baby.
Is it in the basin?
Yes. And like it. And so, okay, babe. And so on Facebook, have quite a bit of Facebook friends. So they share it as well. And yeah, and so that's pretty much it. I'm trying to develop the Instagram. I haven't been quite an Instagram person. So I'm trying to, it's a different for me. So I'm just trying to get better with it. And from some Instagram classes that I've listened to, they say to post like 3 times a day. And I'm like, I can't do that.
And it's good that you're mentioning this, because Isabelle actually is pretty good at this from a fitness perspective and building kind of a following. Isabelle, any tips from an Instagram standpoint on things you can do to get more views?
I would say that with Instagram you have to be consistent. So, and also kind of like follow the community if you like into Airbnb and stuff. So I would say follow similar account that that into Airbnb, and also the hotel community, and you kind of like based on that you'll be able to see like the hashtags and stuff that they are using, and then you can use that. That's the only thing I can recommend. And also comment on other account that like similar to the same niche that you are in.
Okay, that's great feedback. Thank you. Yes.
Okay.
Nope.
Okay. Nate, switching over to you, man. It's been a minute. How are you doing? Anything new that you're working on?
Great question. Yeah, I'm currently in the process of purchasing another property. Actually just was driving from dropping off the earnest money. And so I saw your email come through and I was like, let me join today. So probably be a good motivation for this purchase that I'm making.
Hey, come on now. That's awesome, man. And is this going to be an pure investment or one that you're going to leverage being able to move into and put a low down payment?
Yeah, it's going to be a primary residence. So I'm leaving my current property. I'm going to rent this out and then move into that one when we close on it. So
nice.
Yeah, that's the strategy.
Nice. Have you already run the numbers to kind of figure out, hey, how much you can rent your current location for?
No, because I basically made the decision on this home within the last couple of days. So the next couple of days is going to be me going through and seeing what this property would possibly rent for. So I'm going to be running the numbers in the next couple of hours to look at that.
Okay, to that point, if you need some help on that, hit me up offline. More than happy to walk through that with you. And Nate, just for everybody else's perspective, because I want to come back to that getting the real estate bug piece that was mentioned earlier. When did you buy your first home? What year?
That was 2020. So it was right at the heat of everything kind of crashing down. And so it was 2020, June of 2020 was when I closed on the property. So I was looking for a property around March, May, when things was getting kind of interesting. So that's when I purchased it.
And less than 2 years later, about a year and a half, he's got another one under contract. So hey, congrats to you. Definitely excited to hear as that process gets toward the end. And now kicking it over to Mati, I know you have a lot going on from a real estate standpoint. Anything that you want to highlight that you're working on?
Right now, just working on our new acquisition, 5050 Campbellton. That's going pretty well. Excited about this one. This one is moving pretty rapidly, actually. Hence not having to worry about permitting and stuff like that. So pretty excited about this one. And another exciting thing with that, the last acquisition, 356, starting to pick up paint colors. So that's, always a fun part, even though that one is, slowly creeping. But yeah, still rehabbing and getting projects done.
Yeah, that's dope. That's dope. And when you talk about permitting, okay, this is a huge one. This is one that I think a lot of people may overlook. But how important is it to not have to pull permits on a property versus pulling permits?
Oh man, it's a game changer because depending on what you need to pull in the particular city you're in, that thing could be dragged out. So prior to purchasing, I always recommend going in, seeing the scope, and then getting some information about that particular city, and knowing what those guidelines are. And then you make that decision whether you want to go through it or not. So yeah, that's kind of it. But if the deal is sweet enough and is worth the wait,
Hey, come on now.
Gotta go with it.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That is awesome. Okay, guys, any topics, any questions, anything that anybody wanted to cover in this call, or anything that's burning on your mind?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask questions around potentially how any of you have used opening up a Heloc account in your existing properties to kind of finance, the next properties, and how you were able to kind of cycle that for if that was a strategy that anyone has kind of used, cycle that for purchasing more properties. So if anyone could give a little bit of insight on that, that'd be awesome.
Nate, you are in my wheelhouse, man. So
Awesome.
literally, Heloc is something I'd heard about for many years. You listen about it, you're hearing about it. Typically, it's horror stories of how people used it back in 08 when they were, or 06 when they were using it to go buy boats and stuff. And one of my guys last year purchased his third home using a Heloc. And I talked to him and he explained the whole process, and it didn't seem that difficult. So I started to explore it last year as well. And I can tell you that it's an excellent strategy for getting money to invest when you know you're going to get that money back pretty quickly. Like if you're investing in an Airbnb, if you're investing in a syndicate or other deals where there's like set time limits, etc. And the cool thing about a Heloc is once you get approved for it, you have it for 10 years, at least with the Heloc I got. I was able to use the rapid rise in equity that we had over the last year to secure a $100,000 Heloc on my primary residence. And I've been using that to invest in different deals because it's way better than trying to use, other forms of money. With the Heloc, they basically are able to give you up to the value of your home, the difference between how much you owe and the value of your appraised home to you, and they give it to you at a low interest rate. So my Heloc is at a 5% interest rate, which is much lower than you can get from any type of credit card, etc. And I have it for a decade. I can use that to invest in deals and then pull it back in. But the process is really not that hard. All you would do is call up the lender that currently owns your mortgage, tell them, hey, I want to look into a Heloc on my primary. And they ask maybe 2 questions, 3 questions, a couple documents here and there. And it's not that hard of a process.
Awesome. So you mentioned how you were going to go about paying down on the amount that you spent from the actual account. Could you speak a little bit to that again? I just want to get some clarity around that. You were saying that were you saying that opting into opening up a Heloc is only a good choice if you were opening it for like Airbnb properties or things that would generate a lot of income rapidly?
For me personally, I still think about those horror stories in 06, and I want to have it to where, hey, if I'm going to use this Heloc, I want to almost use it like a line of credit. Hey, I'm going to put it out there, but I want to have a defined date when it's going to be paid back. I can tell you that with my Heloc, I only have to pay 1%. All right. And that was the episode with the mastermind group. I hope that you found value in that. If you did, please go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe or follow this podcast so that you can get updates whenever we release an episode, which is every Wednesday. We truly appreciate the support. I hope all of you have an awesome week, crush it, and we'll see you here next week.